with Ryan Shazier in the hospital right now. Who better to have on from the MMQB, Albert Breer, here on the show. How you doing, Albert?
I'm good, Rich. Too bad I didn't hear from you last week. It's kind of, I guess, waiting kind of takes the edge off a little bit, doesn't it?
Edge off of what?
The edge off of your third straight or your sixth straight loss.
Well, I thought you almost said third string, since that's the quarterback that we had in there.
Okay. Well, we had our second-string quarterback in there too. So
hey, look, man, you're the better team. I don't have a problem admitting that. It's tough, obviously, to swallow. I cannot believe all my Michigan friends have been going back and forth. 14 out of 15. It boggles the mind. But at some point, it's going to have to change. One has to think. And one of the reasons why I did ring you up is because I'm sure you know all about Shazier. What can you tell about folks about Shazier, who he is, and the parents that just got flown in private charter by the Steelers to check on him, and what you know about his condition?
Yeah, I think when Urban got to Ohio State, he was really sort of one of the foundation pieces and one of the more well-liked guys in the program. And here's one thing that really sticks out about him. If you go back and anybody can go on YouTube and call up his Ohio State highlights, you'll notice he's wearing three different numbers. In some of them he's wearing the number 48, in others he's wearing the number 2, and then most of them he's wearing his number, which was number 10. And what you come to find out if you research that is he wore 48 for a guy he grew up with back home who'd passed away, and then he wore number 2 because one of Ohio State's captains that year broke his leg and was out for the year. And so, that doesn't make him a hero, but, he's just kind of like one of these guys who's really conscientious about the people around him and really cares about the people around him. And, I think that's why he was such a good natural leader at Ohio State during the transition from Luke Fickell to Urban Meyer, and then, again, kind of became the leader of the new group, the new young group that they're building in Pittsburgh on the defensive side of the ball, and they've got a lot of good young players there. And, he was sort of the guy who I think was going to be, like that Levon Kirkland, Lawrence Timmons guy in the middle of the defense for years to come. And so, I know we always say these things in the wake of stuff like this, but it really is genuinely, his reputation couldn't be much better. And that goes all the way back to when he was 18, 19 years old in college.
And so do we know anything more about his condition as we're currently sitting here in the middle of our Tuesday show?
I mean, it doesn't look good. I know that there's been some feeling in his extremities, but, I think we have to wait and see, and more information will come out on this. But, clearly he's not out of the woods.
And you're right. I mean, for a team that, is all about the offense thrown in around, for an organization that used to be about running the ball with Bettis and then that defense, right? And then that defense that LeBeau is cooking up all sorts of evil. And then they lost Palomalu and they lost everybody that used to be associated with that. It's interesting that Shazier is definitely become the leader of that.
Yeah, and it took him a while too. I mean, this is probably as well-rounded a team as Tomlin's had since the last time they were in the Super Bowl, right? In 2010, they'd become offense heavy because they got old on defense, and then a bunch of those guys were gone, and they didn't do a great job of replacing them at first. I'm talking about the guys like Palomalu, Lawrence Timmons was there for a little longer, but Ike Taylor, it took them a while to build that back up, and now it looks like they're finally there, Rich. Behind guys like Cam Hayward and Stephon Tuitt and T.J. Watt and Bud Dupree and Artie Burns, it looks like they're finally getting there, and really I think the way that they envisioned it was, after this year they were going to lock Shazier up, give him a big contract, and he was going to be the leader of the next generation of great Steeler defenses. And so obviously all of that's up in the air now, and there are more important matters at hand.
Sure.
But certainly he was sort of the face of the rebuild that Kevin Colbert and Mike Tomlin had successfully pulled off the last couple of years.
Rebuild from some of the great players on that defense, that one of whom you neglected to mention, Lamar Woodley. I wonder why you left Woodley out of that mix, Albert.
No, I like Lamar. We'll throw Lamar Woodley in there, too.
Okay, yeah, I mean, he's no slouch. All right, so what happened? What can you say happened with Ben McAdoo? Obviously, the losses are one thing, but wasn't he just carrying down the message from the owner through Jerry Reese that was intended, which is Eli, you're sitting, unless.
Yeah, I think that's part of it, certainly. And I think, over the years we've seen this with John Mara. They have largely, those owners have largely left the football decisions to the football people and empowered the football people to make those decisions, the general managers and the coaches that they've had there. I think one of the early bad signs was the week of the Beckham dog peeing thing, and I think Ben had made an effort to set a standard with his team by going at Eli after that Monday night and kind of trying to send the message to his team, nobody's above the standard here. And 6 days later, the dog peeing thing happens. And Ben came out after that game and said, well, I wish everybody would focus on the great catches he was making. 3 days later, John Mara is sitting Odell Beckham down. And the fact that he had to do that and that the head coach hadn't accomplished what needed to be accomplished there, I think was the first sign of real doom. And, we saw it again in this situation where John Mara had to come down and kind of massage the situation after all hell broke loose early last week. And I think it was just kind of, those are signs along the way that while Ben McAdoo's a good coach, he's maybe not the program leader that they needed there. And that's one of the things that gets lost sometimes, Rich. A lot of times you want to bring in a coach who can develop quarterbacks. You want to bring in a coach who can call an offense. And you forget that, these guys are really the CEO of the football operation. They're the guy who's in front of those 53 guys, and they're in charge of those 53 guys, and they're in charge of all those coaches. And that's the biggest part of their job. And I think that's the part of the job where Ben really failed. And you can see it with his handling of Odell Beckham, and you can certainly see it with the way that the Eli Manning thing unfolded over the last week.
So who's next? Who do you think they're going to target?
Well, I think until we know who the general manager is, we may not have a clear idea of that. I certainly think that, you can look to the Patriots organization, because I know this. I know John Mara is going to place that call to Bill Belichick, and he's going to ask Bill Belichick what he thinks. And I would think Bill Belichick would vouch for both Nick Caserio and Josh McDaniels. And so I think the possibility of a package deal is there. I also think you could pair Josh with somebody like Scott Pioli in Atlanta, or even a Eric DeCosta, in Baltimore, who's been kind of a hands-off guy because everybody assumes he's just going to succeed Ozzie there. I think Eric would be somebody who could be in play because this is a Cadillac job. Maybe that'd be the job that he'd actually leave Baltimore for. And so I think you have to identify who the GM is going to be first. I think one thing that the Giants have to look at, too, here, and this is an important piece of it, is do we look at restructuring our organization? Forever there, it's been the head coach works for the GM. In fact, going all the way back, that's what caused friction between George Young and Bill Parcells. And so I think that they have to look at the idea maybe of dividing the power in a little bit of a different way, because that might be what it takes to get the right head coach. And if you look in certain situations, that is what it takes to get a great head coach. Dan Quinn was in demand 3 years ago, so the Falcons gave him power over the 53. Same thing with Adam Gase in Miami 2 years ago. And so I think not only do they have to look at these individual names for both those spots, I think they also have to look at how the football operation's set up. And so there's a lot of big decisions to make, and it's not just on which people are in charge. It's also on how do we want to set this whole thing up, because that could affect who's available to them.
Bert, love chatting with you. We'll chat down the line, okay?
All right, thanks, Rich. Have a good one.
You got it. That's Albert Breer of the MMQB. Again, check out his column on the Giants.
The Rich Eisen Show, weekdays at noon Eastern on Audience.